Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about React and JavaScript. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, should I learn basic JavaScript first or go right into React? I would suggest that you go right into React. Depending on how fresh you are. So if you've never written a single line of software in your entire life, I suggest that you start with basic JavaScript. You take a course, that's the beautiful part about JavaScript. You can learn it online. I mean, many languages allows you to do that, but take a course just to learn the syntax and start by just learning, what is a variable, what is a loop, what is an array, etc., etc. Learn these basic constructs, and then when you have learned how to just do like the Hello World ++ application stuff, then go right into React. The reason why I say that is because you have to understand the requirements, at least if you want to be a professional, of the roles that you're going to find yourself in. So today the demand for people who know just vanilla JavaScript is fairly low in comparison to the demand for people who know, say, React or Angular or Vue. And that's something that you should address and kind of acknowledge it and act on if you want to work as a professional. Now, the mistake that a lot of people make is that they learn React and then they stop. And that's the thing that I want to tell you. So the way that you learn vanilla JavaScript today is, in my opinion, best summarized in this fashion. Figure out how React works. And when you know how React works, try to do it without React when you've mastered React. It used to be the case that you had to learn. Well, a lot of people were using jQuery when I started at the very least. So jQuery, you went from you learned, as I was saying, first the basic syntax of JavaScript, and then you learned how to use jQuery to do all the stuff that you needed in the browser, right? And then you sort of, because the distance between jQuery and React, or jQuery and JavaScript, it was so small that in many cases I found that I remember still that I had some students or classmates who didn't really understand why this thing that they were doing wasn't working. And I said, well, because you don't have jQuery. Like, you're trying to do something in all JavaScript, but jQuery is just a library. And the thing that I'm after here is basically to tell you that React is the same sort of beast, right? Where usually when you learn a programming language, you're trying to achieve some goal. You're trying to make something. And the best thing for you in the beginning is to do what I argue is the top-down approach, where you start by learning the stuff that you need to build the thing. That's number one. And when you have learned how to just build the thing, then you can go into going deeper and through your knowledge stack and get solid. That's what I argue. This is how I learn myself, and this is how I train other people, and this is how I believe the most efficient way for humans to learn. I don't believe in the bottom approach at all, because simply put, if you try to teach somebody something from the bottom up approach, you're basically forcing them to do a lot of upfront work to finally getting to the point where they actually get to build or make the thing that is valuable to them. And by that time, if you're lucky, they might remember all the stuff you've already taught them, or they're going to be, they're going to forget it, which is mostly the case. Or you're going to have a lot of people who drop off. There's only one type of person who can actually do that, and that is the sort of grindstone, I want to learn all the things type of people. They are the people who make it through. But the reality is that it's very rare that is necessary. It does happen, but usually you can get the same sort of solid understanding of something by going top down. because you can start by just learning how to do the motions of something or how to use a specific tool or something like that. And then when they feel comfortable using that tool, then you go into the depths and explain, okay, this is how React works under the hood. This is, for example, Babel or Transpilers or Webpack or whatever you're using. Like, this is how these tools are doing these things. Let's say that you started with Create React App or something simple like that. A Create React App is just an abstraction on top of a bunch of other low-level tools, and then we go into those tools and we talk about, okay, these are the tools that you're using, and these are like Create React App is doing all that stuff for you, but let's do it without Create React App now, and you can see why it's convenient to use Create React App. And then when you do that, you go even further and further and further, and by the time that you get to the lowest levels, you're going to try to make your own implementation of React, and you're going to figure out why it's so nice that somebody else created that library for you, because it's actually a bit of a hassle to just use vanilla JavaScript to do a lot of the stuff that, say, React is doing. But the key thing here is the continuous learning. That is the key thing. It's all about the continuous learning, and that's why I tell people, start by just learning basic JavaScript, because you will have to know basic JavaScript just to get the syntax. I mean, React is a JavaScript library, or that's in essence what it is, right? But the thing that you will use JavaScript for most, unless you're doing Node.js development, is to do things in the browser and build web pages and stuff like that. And that's the thing that is tricky, and that's what React is there to help you with. So then you learn React, and then when you feel like you sort of know that, you continue your process of learning, and you go further down and you try to build things without React, or so forth and so forth, so that you can really solidify your understanding of the entire, like the whole process. And then you're gonna end out on, okay, now you need to understand stuff that is outside of the browser, for example. But it's up to you how far you want to go in your learning. But that is the process that I recommend for most people, because it's going to give you incentive to learn more. First, you're going to learn the stuff that you need to do the thing, and then after that, you're going to understand the underlying levels, which is actually it's the most organic way of doing it, because in some cases you will find issues that you cannot actually solve with just React. And so in that scenario, you actually have to know more than React. But it's better, in my opinion, to give people upfront value and like immediate return on investment, rather than delaying that and forcing them through a process where they have to learn like those lower level concepts and not really understanding what the value of this stuff is until much later. That's at least what I found to be the most useful way of learning. So what I want you to take away from this is that I would say that I suggest to you to start by just learning the JavaScript syntax, which should not take all that long. And then you will figure out what you need to use JavaScript for. It's usually to make a server in Node or something like that, or building a web page. And if you're going to build a web page by today's standards, usually most people are using React, even though it's not always the right tool, but it's the default for a lot of people, or Angular or something like that. And then you might as well get into that tool immediately, because even though there's more to development, and like there are lower level concepts than, say, React, it's a very good starting point, because you are going to get a lot of good content, tutorials and stuff like that, and you're going to be able to make something immediately. And that's the point. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing this for, right? You're trying to build stuff with the skills that you acquire for programming. And so by doing that immediately, you start realizing that, yeah, I can actually produce some stuff. And guys, there are people who are shit at just regular JavaScript and even make a living from just knowing how to do React. I argue that if you want to be a really solid professional and really go the distance and become like a senior level software developer, you're going to have to go even lower than that. But you start somewhere, and I argue that the best place to start is at the top. So you learn, just as, if you want to make fire, you don't have to learn thermodynamics before you learn how to rub two sticks together or use a lighter or something like that. Start by doing the thing that is quickest in order to get the value, and then go deeper and deeper and deeper until you either don't feel like you have to go any deeper, or until you hit the bottom and you're studying, switches on the CPU or things, how those lowest level details work. It's really up to you how far down you go, but top down is usually my preferred way of learning. Have a great day.